In 1887, a woman stepped into a frontier church wearing a wedding dress that was never meant for marriage. It was a death shroud for broken promises. The town laughed as she walked down the aisle toward a man who needed a cook, not a wife. But when his 6-year-old daughter stood and screamed those 3 words, everything changed. What no one knew was that the bride carried a secret so dangerous it would bring armed men to their doorstep and force her husband to make an impossible choice: his daughter's safety or his wife's life. Stay with me until the end of this story, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this tale has traveled. The autumn wind cut through Black Hollow like a rusty knife, carrying the smell of wood smoke and coming snow. Evelyn Mercer stood in the back room of the general store, staring at her reflection in a cracked mirror that made her look even more distorted than she already felt. The wedding dress didn't fit. It had fit once, years ago, when she'd sewn it with her mother's help in a different life. Back when her father still owned land. Back when her sister Ruth still slept in the bed beside hers. Back when the word tomorrow meant something other than survival. Now the fabric strained across her shoulders and pulled tight around her middle. The lace yellowed, the hem uneven where she'd let it out twice already. "You don't have to do this," Mrs. Patterson said from the doorway. The storekeeper's wife held a box of pins, her face arranged in what she probably thought was sympathy, but looked more like pity. "There's other ways for a woman alone. You could work here. I could use help with—" "I'm fine," Evelyn said, though her hands shook as she tried to fasten the buttons running down her spine. Mrs. Patterson stepped closer, her voice dropping. "Boone Calloway is a hard man, Evelyn. Lost his wife 2 years back and hasn't smiled since. That little girl of his runs wild. The ranch is 20 miles from town. You'll be alone out there with—" I said I'm fine. The older woman's mouth pressed into a thin line. She set down the pins and left without another word. Evelyn knew what she really meant. "You're desperate, and he knows it. He's not marrying you for love. He's hiring you with a ring." The truth sat in her stomach like a stone. She'd arrived in Black Hollow 3 weeks ago with 17 cents in a carpet bag containing everything she owned. The stagecoach driver had looked at her ticket stub and said, "You sure about this, miss? Ain't much out here for a woman alone." She wasn't sure, but everywhere else had run out. After her father died, shot in a card game over debts he couldn't pay, the creditors came like vultures. They took the house, the furniture, her mother's jewelry. When there was nothing left to take, they took Ruth, 8 years old, blonde curls and a gap-toothed smile. Gone. The men who took her weren't slavers in the traditional sense. They called themselves debt collectors. Said Ruth would work in a boarding house up north until the family debt was paid. Gave Evelyn an address scrawled on the back of a receipt. She'd spent 3 years trying to earn enough money to buy Ruth's freedom. Worked as a seamstress in Philadelphia until the factory burned. Cleaned houses in Baltimore until the family accused her of theft. A lie. But her word meant nothing against theirs. Moved west to St. Louis, then Kansas City, each time telling herself she was getting closer. The address turned out to be a burned foundation and a neighbor who said the place had been condemned years ago. Ruth was gone. Really gone. That's when Evelyn stopped trying to find her sister and started trying to disappear herself. The wedding dress had been Ruth's idea, designed during long evenings when they'd sit together and dream about futures that seemed possible then. "When you get married," Ruth had said, "I want to be there. And we'll have it in the mountains, where Mama took us that one time. Remember?" Evelyn remembered. She'd kept the dress through everything. Sold her mother's ring, her father's watch, her own shoes once. But never the dress. It was the last promise she had left to keep, even if she was about to break it. Nuts. The church bell started ringing at 2 o'clock. Evelyn walked alone from the general store to the white-clapboard church at the end of Main Street. No family to escort her, no friends to fuss over her hair. Just her and the dress and the wind that kept trying to push her backward. People were already gathering outside. She heard the whispers before she saw their faces. "That's her? Lord have mercy, Boone must be desperate. Poor man, bet she can't even cook. Probably can't do much of anything, looking like that." Evelyn kept her eyes forward. She'd learned a long time ago that people said cruel things quieter when you looked at them directly. Inside, the church was packed, every pew filled. The whole town had turned out, but not for celebration. They'd come to watch her humiliation. She recognized the type of crowd. The same people who'd gathered in Philadelphia to watch the factory owners parade the girls who'd survived the fire, checking them for burns and injuries like livestock. The same people who'd whispered in Baltimore when she'd been accused of stealing a silver spoon she'd never touched. Schadenfreude, her mother used to call it. The pleasure people took in watching others fall. Reverend Mills stood at the altar, Bible in hand, his face carefully neutral. Beside him stood Boone Calloway. Evelyn had only met him once before, when he'd come to town looking for a wife the same way other men looked for hired help. He was tall, maybe 40, with dark hair going gray at the temples, and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to show emotion. His suit was clean but old. His boots were scuffed. His hands were scarred from ranch work. He didn't look at her when she entered. Next to him, a little girl in a blue dress shifted from foot to foot. Clara, 6 years old, with her father's dark hair and her dead mother's eyes. She stared at Evelyn with the kind of open curiosity children have before the world teaches them to hide it. The organist started playing something that might have been a wedding march, or might have been a funeral dirge. Hard to tell. Evelyn walked down the aisle. Every step felt like walking through mud. The dress rustled. Her shoes, borrowed from Mrs. Patterson and half a size too small, pinched her feet. Somewhere behind her, someone giggled. Then someone else. Then a whole row of women hiding their laughter behind gloved hands. "Big as a barn," one whispered, not quietly enough. "He'll work her like a mule and she'll probably thank him for it. Give it 6 months. She'll run back to wherever she came from." Evelyn's vision blurred, her breath came short. The altar seemed miles away and getting farther. She'd made a mistake. This was wrong. She should leave, should run, should... Clara moved. The little girl stepped away from her father, walked right up to Evelyn in the middle of the aisle, and took her hand. "Don't listen to them," Clara whispered, loud enough for the first 3 pews to hear. "You look pretty." Evelyn's throat closed. Clara turned to face the congregation, still holding Evelyn's hand, and shouted with the full force of her 6-year-old lungs, "She's beautiful, Papa! That's my mama!" The church went silent. Every whisper died. Every giggle stopped. Even the organist's hands froze on the keys. Evelyn looked down at this child she barely knew, this little girl who had just claimed her in front of a room full of strangers, and felt something crack open inside her chest. Boone was staring at his daughter with an expression Evelyn couldn't read. Then he looked at Evelyn, really looked at her for the first time since she'd walked in. He held out his hand. Evelyn took it. His palm was rough and warm. His grip was steady. He didn't smile, but he didn't let go either. They walked the rest of the aisle together, Clara between them, and finished what they'd started. The ceremony was short. Reverend Mills read from the Bible without much enthusiasm. Boone said, "I do," in a voice that sounded more like he was agreeing to a business contract than a marriage. Evelyn's "I do" came out as a whisper. There were no rings, no kiss, no pronouncement of joy or blessing, just, "You're married now. God have mercy on you both." The reception was held in the church basement, which smelled like old hymnals and boiled coffee. Someone had laid out a cake that tasted like sawdust. People came through a receiving line more out of obligation than celebration. "Congratulations," they said with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "Best wishes," with tones that suggested they'd need them. "Hope it works out," meaning it won't. Boone stood beside Evelyn, shaking hands and accepting congratulations with the warmth of a fence post. Clara stuck close to Evelyn's side, holding the skirt of her dress like a lifeline. Mrs. Patterson appeared with a plate of cake. "You'll want to eat something, dear. Long ride out to the ranch." "Thank you. I've put together a basket of supplies. Just some basics. Coffee, flour, dried beans. Should get you through the first few days," she paused. "Boone's not much of a talker. Don't take it personal." "I won't." And Clara, well, she hasn't had a woman's influence in a while. Might be difficult. Evelyn looked down at Clara, who was currently eating frosting directly off the cake with her finger. "We'll manage," Evelyn said. She didn't believe it, but she said it anyway. 6. They left town just before sunset. Boone drove the wagon, Evelyn sat beside him, and Clara perched in the back among bags of flour and crates of supplies. The road out of Black Hollow was little more than 2 ruts through scrub grass and pine trees. Nobody spoke for the first hour. The mountains rose around them, dark and vast. The sky turned purple, then gray, then black. Stars came out in numbers Evelyn had never seen in the cities. The temperature dropped fast. She wrapped her shawl tighter and tried not to shiver. Clara fell asleep in the back, curled up on a sack of grain. Finally, Boone spoke. "You can read?" Evelyn blinked. "Yes." "Write?" "Yes." "Cook?" She hesitated. "Some." "How much is some?" "I can make beans, biscuits, eggs, if the chickens cooperate." "They don't." Silence again. Then, "Claire's been wild since her mother died. Doesn't listen, doesn't mind, runs off into the woods and comes back with skinned knees and torn dresses. Children do that. Not like this." He kept his eyes on the road. "I don't know how to fix it. Thought maybe a woman could." Evelyn understood now. He hadn't married her because he wanted a wife. He'd married her because he needed help raising a daughter he didn't understand. "What happened to her mother?" Evelyn asked. "Fever, 2 winters ago." His jaw tightened. "Took her in 3 days. One morning she was making breakfast. The next she couldn't get out of bed. The third, she was gone." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You didn't know her." He glanced sideways at Evelyn. "I don't expect... We don't have to. I mean, you'll have your own room. I'm not looking for anything like that." "I understand." "Good." More silence. The wagon hit a rut and jostled them both. Evelyn grabbed the edge of the seat to keep from sliding off. "You scared?" Boone asked. "Of what?" "This. Me. Being alone out here." Evelyn thought about it. "I've been scared for 3 years. This is just different scared." He nodded, like that made sense to him. They rode the rest of the way without talking. But Bolkesik. The ranch appeared around midnight, a dark shape against darker mountains. The house was small, maybe 4 rooms, with a sagging porch and a stone chimney. Behind it stood a barn, a chicken coop, and a few corrals. Everything looked tired. Boone pulled the wagon to a stop and jumped down. He lifted Clara out of the back without waking her, then gestured for Evelyn to follow him inside. The house smelled like smoke and old bacon grease. Boone lit a lamp, revealing a front room with a stone fireplace, a rough wooden table, 2 chairs, and not much else. Dishes were piled in a wash basin. Dust covered everything. Soot stained the walls above the fireplace. "Your room's through there," Boone said, nodding toward a door on the left. "Clara's is on the right. Mine's upstairs." He carried Clara to her room and came back a moment later. "Kitchen's there, pumps outside. Fire needs to be kept going through the night, or the pipes freeze. Chickens need feeding at dawn. There's a root cellar under the back porch." He paused. "Any questions?" "About 1,000. Evelyn shook her head. "Right. Well, I'll bring your things in." He went back outside, leaving Evelyn standing in the middle of a strange house that was now supposedly her home. She walked to the room he'd indicated. It was barely bigger than a closet, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a wooden crate serving as a table. A single window looked out at nothing but darkness. She sat on the bed. It creaked. This was her life now. This room. This house. This man who'd married her out of necessity, and this child who'd claimed her out of desperation. Evelyn pulled the wedding dress over her head, folded it carefully, and set it on the crate. Even in the dim lamplight, she could see how worn it was. How pathetic. Ruth would have hated this, would have told her to leave, to find something better. But there wasn't anything better. And Ruth wasn't here to tell her anything. Evelyn lay down on the narrow bed in her shift and stared at the ceiling. Outside, she heard Boone moving around, putting away supplies, checking the animals. Normal sounds, ordinary sounds. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine a future where this worked, where she learned to cook better and Clara minded her, and Boone maybe smiled once in a while. Where the town stopped laughing and the loneliness stopped hurting and the guilt about Ruth finally faded. She couldn't imagine it, but she also couldn't imagine anywhere else to go. So she stayed. The first week was a disaster. Evelyn burned breakfast 3 mornings in a row. The biscuits came out like rocks. The coffee tasted like mud. She tried to make stew and somehow ended up with something that looked like gray paste. Boone ate without complaining, but Clara was less diplomatic. This tastes like the bottom of the creek, she announced at dinner on the third night. Clara, Boone warned. Well, it does. Evelyn stared at the congealed mess on her plate and couldn't argue. The laundry was worse. She'd done laundry before, but always in a city with proper tubs and soap. Here, she had to haul water from the pump, heat it over the fire, and scrub everything by hand. She used too much soap the first time and the clothes came out stiff. Too little the second time and they still smelled like sweat. The third time, she accidentally knocked over the whole tub and had to start over. Boone's shirts ended up pink after she washed them with Clara's red dress. They're fine, he said, holding up a shirt that was decidedly not fine. They're pink. I've worn worse. But she saw him bury them at the bottom of his drawer. The chickens were a nightmare. They scattered whenever she came near. She collected 3 eggs the first day, 2 the second, and none after that because she forgot to close the coop and something, probably a fox, got in and killed half the flock. Boone found her sitting in the dirt outside the coop, surrounded by feathers and dead chickens, crying. He didn't say anything, just started digging graves. Clara helped bury them, giving each one a name and a eulogy. This one was Henrietta. She was mean, but she laid good eggs. This one was Dorothy. She pecked me once. This one was... We don't have time for this, Boone said. But they were our chickens. They were food that stopped laying. That's all. Clara's face crumpled. She ran into the house. Evelyn watched her go. You could have let her finish. She needs to learn. Things die out here. Crying doesn't fix it. She's 6. I know how old my own daughter is. He drove the shovel into the dirt harder than necessary. You want to raise her soft? That's your business, but don't tell me how to do my job. I wasn't... Yeah, you were. He finished burying the chickens alone. Much. But there were moments. Small ones. Like the afternoon Evelyn found Clara in the woods behind the house, trying to climb a tree that was clearly too tall for her. Need help? Evelyn called. No, Clara shouted down. Then a moment later, maybe. Evelyn walked over and studied the tree. It was an old pine, tall and straight, with branches that started about 8 feet up. Why this one? She asked. I can see the whole valley from the top. Mama used to take me up there. Clara's voice went quiet. I can't remember what it looks like anymore. Evelyn's chest tightened. Come here. She laced her fingers together and made a step with her hands. Clara put her foot in it, and Evelyn boosted her up to the first branch. From there, Clara climbed like a squirrel, fast and fearless. Be careful, Evelyn called. I'm always careful. That was obviously a lie, but Evelyn let it go. Clara reached a branch about 20 feet up and stopped. I can see everything. The house, and the barn, and the creek, and, oh, there's a deer. Evelyn shaded her eyes and looked up. Clara was a small silhouette against the sky, arms spread wide, grinning like she'd conquered a mountain. She looked free. You're not scared? Evelyn called. Of what? Falling. I won't fall. I'm good at this. Famous last words, Evelyn thought. But she didn't say it. Clara stayed up there for an hour, narrating everything she saw. Evelyn sat at the base of the tree and listened. She learned that Clara could identify bird calls, that she knew which plants were edible and which weren't, that she'd named every animal on the ranch, and most of the wild ones, too. How do you know all that? Evelyn asked. Mama taught me. She knew about everything that grows. Clara swung her legs. Papa doesn't remember none of it. He says it doesn't matter because we're ranchers, not gardeners, but it does matter, doesn't it? It matters, Evelyn said. When Clara finally climbed down, she hugged Evelyn without warning, just threw her arms around her waist and squeezed. Thanks for helping me up, she said into Evelyn's dress. Any time. And she meant it. The nights were hardest. The house was cold. The wind howled through gaps in the walls. Every sound seemed amplified. The creak of floorboards, the scratch of branches against the windows, the distant howl of wolves. Evelyn lay in her narrow bed and thought about Ruth, wondered where she was, if she was still alive, if she remembered the promise they'd made. We'll meet again beneath the mountains. She'd failed. She'd given up. She'd married a stranger and moved to the middle of nowhere and let Ruth slip away into whatever darkness had swallowed her. Some nights, Evelyn pulled the wedding dress out and held it, running her fingers over the stitches she and her mother had sewn together. Ruth had picked the lace. Their mother had cut the pattern. Evelyn had done the hemming. It was supposed to be joyful. Now it just felt like evidence of everything she'd lost. One night, Clara caught her. Evelyn had been crying quietly in her room, holding the dress, when she heard the door creak. She looked up to find Clara standing there in her nightgown, hair tangled, eyes worried. "Why are you sad?" Clara asked. "I'm not." "You are. You cry a lot at night. I hear you." Evelyn wiped her face. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't. I don't sleep good anyway." Clara came closer and touched the dress. "This was from the wedding." "Yes. But you look sad when you hold it. Why?" How do you explain loss to a child who's already lost her mother? How do you talk about promises and failure and guilt when the person asking is 6 years old and standing in her bare feet on a cold floor? "It reminds me of someone," Evelyn said finally. "Someone I miss." "Your mama?" "My sister." Clara's eyes widened. "You have a sister? Where is she?" "I don't know." "Did she die like my mama?" "I don't know that either." Clara thought about this. Then she climbed onto the bed next to Evelyn and leaned against her shoulder. "I think about Mama every day," she said. "Papa says I shouldn't because it makes me sad, but I think about her anyway. I think that's okay." "You think?" "I think we're allowed to miss people, even if it hurts." They sat together in silence. Outside, an owl called. The wind rattled the windows. "Can I sleep in here tonight?" Clara asked. "If you want." Clara curled up under the blanket, small and warm. Within minutes, she was asleep. Evelyn sat awake a while longer, holding the dress, feeling the weight of a child she hadn't given birth to pressed against her side. Maybe this was what family looked like now. Not blood, not promises. Just two people trying not to be alone in the dark. A month passed. Then 2. Evelyn stopped burning everything she cooked. The biscuits became edible. The laundry came out clean. The chickens, what was left of them, started tolerating her presence. Clara followed her everywhere, chattering constantly. She wanted to know about cities and trains and buildings taller than trees. She wanted to know if Evelyn had ever seen the ocean, if she knew how to read French, if she believed in ghosts. "Yes, no, and sometimes," Evelyn answered. "Sometimes you believe in ghosts?" "Sometimes they seem real." Clara grinned. "I knew you were interesting." Boone remained distant but less hostile. He still didn't talk much, but he started leaving things for Evelyn. Firewood stacked by the door, the good knife sharpened, a jar of honey from town with no explanation. Small gestures. But they felt like something. One evening, Evelyn was preparing dinner when Boone came in from the barn. He stood in the doorway, hesitating. "Need something?" she asked. "Claire's been asking about stars." "Stars?" "Yes, as you told her stories about constellations, she wants to know more." He shifted his weight. "I thought maybe after dinner you could show her, if you don't mind." "I don't mind." "Good. Okay." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Also, the stew smells good." It was the first compliment he'd given her. After dinner, Evelyn took Clara outside. The night was clear and cold, the sky full of stars. They lay on their backs in the grass, and Evelyn pointed out shapes: Orion, the Big Dipper, Cassiopeia. Clara listened, rapt. "How do you know all this?" "My father taught me. He said sailors used to navigate by the stars, that you could find your way home if you knew how to read the sky." "Could we do that? Find our way home?" "We are home." "No, I mean, if we got lost, if we were in the woods and couldn't find the house." Evelyn thought about it. "Yes, I think we could." Clara smiled. "That's good. Then we'll never be lost." From the porch, Boone watched them. He didn't join them, but he didn't go inside either. Later, when Clara was asleep and Evelyn was cleaning the dinner dishes, he spoke from the doorway. "She likes you." Evelyn glanced back. "I like her too." "She's easier now, calmer, since you came. She just needed someone to pay attention." "Maybe." He paused. "You're good with her, better than I am. You're her father. That matters more." "Does it?" The question hung in the air, heavy with something Evelyn couldn't name. "Yes," she said. "It does." Boone nodded slowly. Then he went upstairs without another word. But the next morning, there was fresh coffee waiting when she came into the kitchen. And the fire had already been lit. Small gestures, but they kept adding up. Winter arrived early that year. The first snow fell in October, covering the ranch in white silence. The work got harder, breaking ice on the water troughs, keeping the animals fed, hauling wood through drifts that came up to Evelyn's knees. But the house got warmer. Clara taught Evelyn card games and told her stories about her mother, how she used to sing while doing laundry, how she made the best apple pie in the territory, how she died too fast for anyone to say goodbye. "Do you think she'd like you?" Claire asked one night. "I don't know. I hope so. I think she would. You're nice and you don't yell as much as Papa. Your father doesn't yell that much. He yells on the inside, I can tell." Evelyn couldn't argue with that. Boone started talking more too. Not a lot, but enough. He told her about the ranch, how he'd built it from nothing, how the winters were brutal but the summers made up for it, how he wanted to expand the herd but couldn't afford it yet. "Why did you come west?" Evelyn asked one evening. They were sitting by the fire. Clara had already gone to bed. Outside, the wind howled. "Didn't have a choice," Boone said. "I was in debt back east. Bad investments, stupid decisions. Came out here to start over." "Did it work?" "Still working on it." He stoked the fire, watching the flames. "What about you?" he asked. "Why'd you come to Black Hollow?" Evelyn hesitated. She'd been careful not to talk about her past, but something about the firelight and the late hour made her reckless. "I was looking for someone," she said. "Find them?" "No." "They dead?" "I don't know. Maybe." Boone nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. "That dress," he said. "The one you got married in. It meant something, didn't it?" Evelyn's breath caught. "Why do you say that?" "The way you look at it sometimes, like it's more than just cloth." She thought about lying. It would be easier, but she was tired of carrying the weight alone. "It was supposed to be for a different wedding," she said. "One that never happened. My sister and I made a promise when we were young, that we'd meet again someday beneath the mountains, and I'd wear this dress." She paused. "But she's gone, and I gave up looking, so now it's just a reminder of promises I couldn't keep." The fire crackled. The wind scratched at the windows. "You didn't give up," Boone said quietly. "You're here, beneath the mountains. Maybe that's where you were supposed to be all along." Evelyn looked at him, surprised. "I don't believe in fate," she said. "Neither do I. But I believe in second chances." He stood up, brushing ash from his pants. "Get some sleep. Snow's coming in heavy tomorrow." He left her sitting by the fire, staring into the flames, wondering if maybe, just maybe, he was right. Back. The storm hit 2 days later. Snow fell so thick you couldn't see 5 feet ahead. The wind tore shingles off the barn and knocked over fence posts. The temperature dropped so low that the animals huddled together for warmth, and the water inside the house started to freeze. Boone spent hours outside, trying to keep everything from falling apart. Evelyn kept the fire going and made sure Clara stayed warm. They ate sparingly, supplies were running low, and the storm showed no signs of stopping. On the 3rd day, Clara got sick. It started with a cough, then a fever. Then she couldn't get out of bed. Evelyn sat beside her, wiping her forehead with cool cloths, trying not to panic. Boone paced the room like a caged animal. "We need to get her to town," he said. "We can't, not in this storm." "Then what do we do?" "We keep her warm, keep her hydrated, wait for the fever to break." "What if it doesn't?" Evelyn met his eyes. She saw the fear there, the same fear she'd seen in her father's eyes when Ruth had gotten sick years ago, the same fear that came when you loved someone and couldn't protect them. "It will," she said, with more confidence than she felt. That night, Clara's fever spiked. She thrashed in her sleep, calling for her mother. Boone sat on one side of the bed, Evelyn on the other, both helpless. "This is my fault," Boone said. His voice was rough. "I brought her out here. If she dies, she's not going to die. You don't know that." "No, but I'm choosing to believe it anyway." Evelyn started singing. She didn't know where it came from. Maybe something her mother used to sing, or something she remembered from church. The words didn't matter, just the sound, just the rhythm. Clara's breathing steadied. The thrashing stopped. Boone stared at Evelyn like she'd performed a miracle. "Don't stop," he said. So she didn't. She sang until her voice gave out, until the sky started to lighten, until Clara's fever finally broke and she fell into a real sleep. Evelyn slumped in the chair, exhausted. Boone was still watching her. "Where'd you learn that?" "I don't remember. It worked. For now." He stood up slowly, joints cracking. "Get some rest. I'll watch her." "You need rest too." "I'll rest when she's better." Stubborn man. But Evelyn didn't argue. She went to her room and collapsed on the bed, too tired to even take off her shoes. She woke hours later to Clara's voice calling for her. "Evelyn, are you there?" She rushed back to Clara's room. The girl was sitting up, pale but awake. "Hey," Evelyn said, kneeling beside the bed. "How do you feel?" "Tired. And hungry." Clara frowned. "Where's Papa?" "Sleeping. He stayed up all night watching you." "Oh." Clara reached for Evelyn's hand. "Did I scare you?" "Yes." "Sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just get better." "Okay." Clara's grip tightened. "Evelyn?" "Yeah?" "I'm glad you're here. I'm glad Papa married you." Something in Evelyn's chest cracked wide open. She leaned forward and kissed Clara's forehead. "I'm glad too," she whispered. And for the first time since arriving at the ranch, she meant it. Much. The storm finally broke a week later. The sun came out, turning the snow into blinding white light. The world felt new and clean. Clara recovered slowly but completely. Boone stopped pacing. The tension in the house eased. Life returned to something like normal, except it wasn't normal anymore. Something had shifted during those long nights watching Clara fight her fever. Some wall had come down. Boone started sitting with them at dinner instead of eating quickly and leaving. He helped Clara with her schoolwork, letters, and numbers that Evelyn had been teaching her. He even smiled once when Clara read an entire sentence without help. It was a small smile, barely there, but Evelyn saw it. One evening, after Clara had gone to bed, Boone poured 2 cups of coffee and handed one to Evelyn. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For staying, for helping with Clara, for—" He trailed off, searching for words. "For being here." "You don't have to thank me for that." "Yeah, I do." He sat down across from her. "I know this isn't what you wanted. I know you married me because you didn't have anywhere else to go. And I know I haven't made it easy. It's been fine. It's been hard. Don't lie." Evelyn smiled despite herself. "Okay, it's been hard. But you stayed anyway." "Where else would I go?" "Anywhere. Town, back east. You're not trapped here." She thought about that, realized it was true. She could leave, could pack up and walk away. But the idea felt wrong now. "I don't want to go anywhere," she said. Boone looked at her for a long moment. "Good, because I don't want you to." The words hung between them, meaning more than they said. Outside, the stars were coming out. Inside, the fire crackled. And for the first time in 3 years, Evelyn felt like she'd found something close to home. Not the home she'd lost, not the home she'd imagined, but home nonetheless. Spring came late to the mountains that year, arriving in fits and starts. A warm day followed by 3 cold ones, snow mixed with rain, mud everywhere. The ranch emerged from winter looking beaten but alive. Fences needed mending. The barn roof leaked in 2 places. Half the chickens hadn't survived, and the ones that did seemed permanently angry about it. Evelyn stood in the garden plot behind the house, staring at frozen dirt and wondering if anything would grow there. She'd never planted a garden before. In the city, vegetables came from markets. Here, if you wanted to eat come summer, you had to coax life out of hard ground. "You planning to stare at it until something sprouts?" Boone asked from behind her. She turned. He was carrying fence posts, his shirt already dark with sweat despite the cool morning. "I don't know what I am doing," she admitted. "That makes 2 of us." He set down the posts. "But my wife, Clara's mother, she kept a garden, had vegetables and herbs, even some flowers, though I told her they were useless." "Were they?" "Probably, but she liked them." He nudged the dirt with his boot. "Ground's still too frozen. Give it another few weeks." "What did she plant?" "Potatoes, carrots, beans, some kind of lettuce that always bolted before we could eat it." He paused. And lavender. Don't ask me why. Said it helped her sleep. Evelyn tried to picture a woman tending this plot, coaxing beauty and food from stubborn earth. A woman who'd died too fast to say goodbye. Did it? She asked. Help her sleep? No idea. But the whole house smelled like it for years after. His jaw tightened. Clara keeps asking when we'll plant again. I keep telling her I don't know how. I could try. I'll probably kill everything, but can't be worse than me. Last time I tried, I planted the seeds upside down. Evelyn laughed. Actually laughed. Boone's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. I'll ask Mrs. Patterson next time we're in town, Evelyn said. She seems like she'd know. She knows everything, and tells everyone. He picked up the posts again. But yeah, ask her. He walked away toward the broken fence line, and Evelyn turned back to the frozen garden, feeling something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Hope, maybe. Or just stubbornness. Either way, she'd make something grow here. The trip to Black Hollow came 2 weeks later. They needed supplies: flour, sugar, salt, nails, lamp oil. Boone drove the wagon with Clara wedged between him and Evelyn, chattering nonstop about everything they passed. Look, a hawk! That's a crow, Clara. Well, it could have been a hawk. It was far away. The town hadn't changed. Same wooden buildings, same dusty street, same people who'd watched Evelyn walk down the aisle 6 months ago expecting her to fail. She felt them watching as Boone pulled the wagon to a stop outside the general store. I'll get the supplies, he said. You two can... I'm coming with you, Evelyn said. He looked at her. You don't have to. I know. Something passed between them. Then Boone nodded and helped her down from the wagon. Inside, the store smelled like coffee and sawdust. Mrs. Patterson stood behind the counter, sorting mail. Her eyes widened when she saw them. Well, she said, Evelyn Calloway. Didn't expect to see you still here. Why wouldn't I be? No reason. But her tone said otherwise. What can I do for you? Boone handed over the supply list. While Mrs. Patterson gathered items, Evelyn wandered the aisles. She found seed packets near the back, neat rows of illustrated envelopes promising tomatoes, squash, cucumbers. Those won't grow out at your place, a voice said. Evelyn turned. A woman stood there, maybe 30, with red hair and a suspicious expression. Evelyn recognized her from the wedding. She'd been one of the ones laughing. Why not? Evelyn asked. Elevation's too high, season's too short, ground's too rocky. The woman shrugged. My sister tried for 3 years. Nothing took. Where does your sister live? About 10 miles past Calloway Ranch. Same terrain. Evelyn set down the tomato seeds and picked up potatoes instead. Those might work, the woman admitted grudgingly. And the carrots. Maybe beans if you start them inside first. Thank you, the woman hesitated. Look, I wasn't trying to be mean at the wedding. It's just that Boone, he's been alone so long, and then he brings home a stranger, and we all thought... She stopped. I'm making it worse. Yes, Evelyn said, you are. Right, sorry. The woman stuck out her hand. I'm Sarah Brennan. My husband owns the saloon. Evelyn shook her hand cautiously. Evelyn. I know. Everyone knows. Sarah lowered her voice. How is it out there? At the ranch? Boone treating you all right? Fine. And Clara? She's wonderful. Sarah's expression softened. She is, isn't she? That kid's got more spirit than sense. Takes after her mother that way. She paused. Margaret, that was Boone's first wife. She was my friend. Best friend, actually. When she died, it broke something in him. We all saw it. Evelyn didn't know what to say to that. Anyway, Sarah continued, if you need anything, advice, help, someone to talk to, I'm around. The saloon's not as rough as it sounds. We serve decent food on Sundays. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm nosy as hell and I'll probably ask too many questions. Despite herself, Evelyn smiled. I'll keep that in mind. At the counter, Boone was paying for supplies while Clara examined a jar of peppermint sticks. Mrs. Patterson leaned closer to him, speaking too quietly for Evelyn to hear, but she saw Boone's face harden. Just saying, Mrs. Patterson was saying when Evelyn got close enough to listen. People are talking about her past, where she came from, why she showed up here with nothing. That's none of their business, Boone said flatly. Maybe not, but you've got a daughter to think about. And if this woman is my wife. The store went quiet. Even Clara stopped examining the candy. Mrs. Patterson's mouth pinched. Of course. I didn't mean… Yes, you did. Boone picked up the supply crate. Come on, Evelyn, we're leaving. Clara grabbed 2 peppermint sticks, one for her, one for Evelyn, and dropped coins on the counter. Then she followed her father out, chin high. Evelyn trailed behind them, feeling every eye in the store follow her. Outside, Boone loaded the supplies with sharp, angry movements. Clara climbed into the wagon without being told. Neither of them spoke. What did she say? Evelyn asked quietly. Nothing worth repeating. Boone, I said it's nothing. He swung up onto the wagon seat. Let's go home. The ride back was silent except for the wagon wheels and Clara crunching her peppermint stick. Evelyn held hers without eating it, watching the mountains rise around them, wondering what exactly Mrs. Patterson had said and why it made Boone so angry. When they reached the ranch, Boone unloaded the supplies without help and disappeared into the barn. Clara went to check on her favorite horse. Evelyn stood in the yard, alone, feeling like she'd done something wrong without knowing what. She found him an hour later, fixing the barn door that had been hanging crooked since winter. Need help? She asked. No. Boone, I said no. He drove a nail in so hard it split the wood. Damn it. Evelyn waited. She'd learned that pushing him never worked. You had to let him come to it on his own. Finally, he set down the hammer. Mrs. Patterson asked if I knew anything about your family, he said. Said a woman from town claimed she recognized you from somewhere back east. Said there were rumors about debts and… He stopped. She asked if I knew what I was getting into. Evelyn's stomach dropped. What did you tell her? That it wasn't her concern. But it is yours. He looked at her directly. Is it true? About the debts? She could lie. Should lie. But she was tired of carrying it alone. My father owed money when he died, she said. A lot of money. To dangerous men. They took everything we had, including my sister. Boone's expression didn't change. How old was she? 8? And you've been looking for her since. Until I gave up and came here. Silence stretched between them. A crow called from the barn roof. Somewhere in the distance, Clara was singing to her horse. These dangerous men, Boone said slowly. They still looking for you? I don't know. Maybe. And if they find you? I don't know that either. He picked up the hammer again, turning it over in his hands. You should have told me. Would you have married me if I had? Probably not. He met her eyes. But I did marry you, and now you're here, so we deal with it. Just like that? What else are we going to do? Send you back? Put you on a stage with a note saying good luck? He shook his head. You're Clara's mother now, in every way that matters, and I don't take that lightly. Evelyn felt something break loose in her chest. I'm not her mother. I'll never be… Margaret's dead. His voice was rough but certain. And Clara needs someone alive. Someone who stays up when she's sick and teaches her about stars and doesn't run when things get hard. He paused. That's you. Boone, I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's real. He went back to hammering. Now either help me fix this door or go plant that garden. But stop standing there looking like you expect me to throw you out. Evelyn grabbed a board and held it steady while he nailed it in place. They worked in silence, but it was a different kind of silence now. Less lonely, more like partnership. When they finished, Boone stepped back to examine their work. Not bad, he said. It's crooked. Everything on this ranch is crooked. Door fits right in. Despite everything, Evelyn laughed. That night, after Clara was asleep, Evelyn sat by the fire with the wedding dress in her lap. She'd been thinking about what Boone said, about being Clara's mother, about being someone who stayed. The dress felt different in her hands now, lighter, maybe. Or just less important. She'd made it for Ruth. For a promise that couldn't be kept. But Ruth was gone. Really gone. In a way Evelyn was finally starting to accept. And holding on to this dress wasn't bringing her back. Boone came downstairs and stopped when he saw what she was holding. Burning it? He asked. Thinking about it. Don't. He sat down across from her. But maybe put it away for a while. Stop punishing yourself with it every night. I'm not. Yeah, you are. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I did the same thing with Margaret's things. Kept them all over the house like she was coming back. Clara couldn't move without seeing her mother's shawl, or her mother's brush, or her mother's favorite cup. He rubbed his face. Took me 2 years to realize I wasn't honoring her memory. I was just keeping us both stuck. What changed? Clara asked if you could use Margaret's sewing basket. Said it was just sitting there collecting dust and Margaret wouldn't have wanted that. He smiled faintly. 6 years old and she's already smarter than me. Evelyn looked down at the dress. This was supposed to mean something. It did mean something. Still does. Just not the same thing anymore. What does that make me? Someone who breaks promises? No. It makes you someone who survives. He stood up. Get some sleep. Garden won't plant itself. He went back upstairs, leaving Evelyn alone with the fire and the dress and a choice. She could keep holding on, keep waiting for Ruth to miraculously appear, keep punishing herself for failing, or she could fold the dress, put it in the trunk under her bed, and start living the life she actually had instead of the one she'd lost. The fire crackled. Outside, an owl called. Evelyn folded the dress carefully, ran her fingers over the stitching one last time, and carried it to her room. She placed it at the bottom of her trunk, beneath her other clothes, where she wouldn't see it every day. Then she closed the lid and walked away. The garden became her obsession. She worked the soil until her hands blistered, mixing in compost from the barn and ash from the fireplace like Mrs. Patterson had instructed. She planted potatoes in neat rows, carrots in loose soil, beans near stakes she'd hammered into the ground herself. Clara helped, getting more dirt on herself than in the holes. Will they really grow? She asked, dropping 3 bean seeds into a hole. I hope so. What if they don't? Then we'll try again next year. But what if they never grow? Then we'll eat a lot of beans from town and pretend we grew them ourselves. Clara giggled and moved to the next hole. Boone watched from the fence, supposedly fixing a gate, but mostly just standing there. When Evelyn caught him staring, he looked away quickly. You planning to help or just supervise? She called. Supervising's harder than it looks. I bet. He came over anyway, kneeling beside her to plant potato eyes in the rows she'd marked. They worked in comfortable silence until Clara announced she was bored and ran off to climb her favorite tree. She's got energy, Evelyn said. Too much. Don't know where she gets it. He paused. Her mother was like that, always moving, always talking, couldn't sit still for more than 5 minutes. It was the first time he'd talked about Margaret without prompting. You miss her, Evelyn said carefully. Every day. He patted dirt around a potato. But it's different now. Less sharp. More like an old scar instead of a fresh wound. That's good, isn't it? I guess. Feels wrong sometimes. Like I'm supposed to hurt forever to prove I loved her. I don't think that's how it works. No, probably not. He sat back on his heels, looking at the garden taking shape around them. She would have liked you. Evelyn blinked. What? Margaret, she would have liked you. Thought you were good for Clara. Good for me, probably, though I would have been too stubborn to admit it. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. He stood up, brushing dirt from his pants. She always said I needed someone who wouldn't put up with my nonsense, someone who'd push back. He looked at Evelyn directly. You push back. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. But he was almost smiling when he said it. The days grew longer and warmer. Tiny green shoots appeared in the garden. First the beans, then the potatoes, finally the stubborn carrots. Clara checked them obsessively, convinced they'd disappear if she didn't watch them constantly. They're still there, Evelyn would say. I'm just making sure. Life settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Boone worked the ranch, Evelyn managed the house and garden. Clara divided her time between helping both of them and disappearing into the woods for hours at a time. Then one afternoon, everything changed. Evelyn was hanging laundry when she saw the rider coming up the road. A man on a dark horse, moving slowly, like he had all the time in the world. Something about the way he sat, loose and confident, like he owned whatever space he occupied, made her stomach clench. She dropped the shirt she'd been hanging and walked toward the house, trying not to run. Boone, she called. He emerged from the barn, saw the rider, and his whole body went tense. Get Clara, he said quietly. Get her inside. Who is it? I don't know. But get Clara, now. Evelyn found Clara by the creek, catching tadpoles in a jar. Come on, she said, trying to keep her voice calm. We need to go inside. But Now, Clara. Something in her tone made Clara obey without arguing. They hurried back to the house just as the rider reached the yard. Up close, he was younger than Evelyn expected, maybe 30, with sandy hair and a face that might have been handsome if not for the coldness in his eyes. He wore a dusty coat and a gun on his hip, carried casual but deliberate. Afternoon, he said, touching his hat. His voice was pleasant, friendly even. That made it worse somehow. This the Calloway place? It is, Boone said. He stood in the yard, rifle held loose but ready. What do you want? Just passing through. Thought I'd stop and introduce myself. Name's Gideon Rourke. The name meant nothing to Evelyn, but it clearly meant something to Boone. His grip on the rifle tightened. We don't need introductions, Boone said. You can keep riding. Now that's not very neighborly, Gideon smiled, showing teeth. I've come a long way. Least you could do is offer a man some water. The creek's that way. Gideon's smile didn't waver, but something shifted in his expression, like a door closing behind pleasant eyes. Heard you got yourself a new wife, he said. That true? None of your business. See, that's where you're wrong. Gideon's gaze slid past Boone to where Evelyn stood on the porch with Clara pressed against her side. Because I think I know your wife, or at least I know her family. Evelyn's blood went cold. You're mistaken, she said. Am I? Gideon tilted his head, studying her. Evelyn Mercer, daughter of Thomas Mercer, who died owing my employer a considerable sum. Sister to Ruth Mercer, who's currently working off that debt in a very nice establishment up in Denver. The world tilted. Evelyn grabbed the porch railing to steady herself. Ruth, she whispered. She's alive? Alive and well, last I checked, anyway. Gideon's smile widened. Though I wouldn't say she's thriving, debt work rarely allows for thriving. Boone stepped between Gideon and the porch. You need to leave. I will. Soon as I deliver my message. Gideon's pleasant tone never changed. My employer would like the remainder of Thomas Mercer's debt paid. $2,300 plus interest accumulated over the last 3 years. Comes to about $4,000, give or take. I don't have that kind of money, Evelyn said. Figured as much? That's why I'm here with an alternative proposition. He leaned forward in his saddle. You come work for my employer, same arrangement as your sister, and the debt gets transferred to you instead. Ruth goes free. No, Boone said. Gideon ignored him. Think about it, Evelyn. Your sister's been working that debt for 3 years. She's tired, used up, probably won't last another year. He shrugged. But you're fresh, strong. You could work it off in half the time. I said no, Boone repeated, louder. Wasn't asking you, friend. I'm not your friend, and the answer's still no. Gideon finally looked at Boone properly. You do know what she is, don't you? Who her family was? The kind of people they owed money to? Don't care. You should, because those people don't forget debts, and they don't forgive them either. He glanced at Clara, still pressed against Evelyn's side. Nice little girl you got there. Be a shame if something happened to her because you're protecting someone who don't belong here. That did it. Boone raised the rifle and pointed it directly at Gideon's chest. Get off my land, he said, voice like iron. Now. For a moment, nobody moved. The only sound was wind through the grass and Clara's frightened breathing. Then Gideon smiled again, that same pleasant, terrible smile. Just delivering a message, he said. No need to get hostile. He turned his horse slowly. I'll be in town for a few days, in case she changes her mind. He rode away at the same leisurely pace he'd arrived with, like he hadn't just threatened a child and demanded $4,000. When he was out of sight, Boone lowered the rifle. His hands were shaking. Inside, he said. Both of you, now. They went inside. Clara ran to her room. Evelyn stood in the middle of the kitchen, feeling like the floor might open beneath her. Ruth's alive, she said numbly. She's alive, and I left her there, and you didn't know. I should have kept looking. I should have... Evelyn. Boone grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Listen to me. You are not going with that man. You understand? Whatever debt your father owed, whatever happened to your sister, It's not your responsibility to fix by destroying yourself. But Ruth, we'll figure it out. But not like that. Never like that. How? Tears were streaming down her face now. We don't have $4,000. We barely have enough to get through winter. And if I don't go, he'll come back. He'll hurt Clara. He won't touch her. He won't touch you. Boone's voice was absolute. I promise you that. You can't promise that. Watch me. He pulled her into his arms, and Evelyn broke. She'd been holding it together for so long, years of running and hiding and pretending she wasn't terrified. But standing in this kitchen with this man who'd married her out of necessity and was now promising to protect her anyway, she finally let herself fall apart. Boone held her while she cried, one hand in her hair, the other steady on her back. We'll figure it out, he said again. Together. And despite everything, Evelyn believed him. That night, nobody slept. Clara huddled in her room, pretending she hadn't heard everything through the thin walls. Boone sat by the window with his rifle across his lap, watching the dark road like Gideon might come back any minute. Evelyn paced the kitchen until her feet ached, then sat at the table staring at nothing. Around midnight, Clara's door creaked open. She appeared in her nightgown, eyes red from crying. Is he going to take you away? She asked Evelyn. No. But he said, I don't care what he said. Evelyn pulled Clara into her lap, even though the girl was really too big for it now. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Evelyn hesitated. She'd made promises before, broken them too. I promise I'll try my hardest to stay, she said finally. Is that good enough? Clara pressed her face into Evelyn's shoulder. I guess. Boone watched them from across the room, his expression unreadable in the lamplight. Go back to bed, he said to Clara. Both of you. I'll keep watch. You need sleep too, Evelyn said. I'll sleep when I'm dead. It was supposed to be a joke, but nobody laughed. Clara reluctantly went back to her room. Evelyn stayed at the table, and after a while, Boone came and sat across from her. Tell me everything, he said, about your father, the debt, how Ruth ended up in Denver, all of it. So she did. She told him about her father's gambling, the card game that went wrong, the men who came to collect. She told him about watching them take Ruth, about the address that led nowhere, about 3 years of searching that ended in Black Hollow with 17 cents and nowhere left to run. Boone listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. $4,000, he said finally. I know. It's impossible. I didn't say that. He rubbed his jaw, thinking. The ranch is worth something. Not 4,000, but maybe 2 if I sold everything. Land, animals, equipment. No, Boone, you can't. I'm not saying I will. I'm saying it's an option. It's not an option. This is your home. Clara's home. I won't let you destroy that for a debt that isn't yours. Everything that's yours is mine now. That's how marriage works. Not this kind of marriage. He looked at her sharply. What kind is that? The practical kind. The survival kind. The kind where you needed help and I needed somewhere to go and we made an arrangement. That what you think this still is? An arrangement? Evelyn didn't answer, couldn't answer, because the truth was she didn't know anymore. Somewhere between the winter storm and Clara's fever and planting the garden together, things had shifted. But she was afraid to name it, afraid to want something she might lose. I think, Boone said slowly, that you're still trying to run. Even sitting right here, you're looking for the exit. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From me. From my past. From men like Gideon who'll burn down everything you've built just to collect a debt that isn't even mine anymore. Your father's debt died with him. You don't owe these people anything. Tell that to Ruth. The name hung between them, heavy with guilt and grief. We'll get her out, Boone said. I don't know how yet, but we will. Together. He reached across the table and took her hand. But you need to stop acting like you're temporary, like you're just passing through until something better comes along. Nothing better is coming. Then stay. Really stay. Stop keeping one foot out the door. Evelyn looked down at their joined hands, his scarred and calloused, hers dirt-stained from the garden. Not perfect, not romantic, just real. I'm scared, she whispered. Of what? That I'll start believing this is real. and then it'll get taken away. Everything always gets taken away. Not this time. You can't know that. No, he admitted, but I can choose it anyway, every day. And so can you. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. The lamp flickered. In her room, Clara coughed in her sleep. Okay, Evelyn said finally. Okay, what? Okay, I'll try. To stay, to stop running. She squeezed his hand. But if Gideon comes back, when he comes back, we'll deal with it, together. It wasn't a solution, wasn't even a plan, but it was something. They sat there until dawn, hands clasped across the table, neither one willing to let go first. Morning came gray and cold. Boone made coffee while Evelyn tried to coax life into the stove. Clara emerged looking exhausted, her hair a mess, her eyes still worried. Can I stay home today? She asked. I don't want to be alone. You're not going anywhere, Boone said. None of us are. Not until we figure this out. But there was work to do. Animals to feed, fences to mend, a garden that needed weeding. Life didn't stop for threats and fear. So they went through the motions, all three of them staying close to the house, watching the road. Gideon didn't come back that day. Or the next. Or the one after that. The waiting was worse than anything. Maybe he left, Clara said hopefully on the third day. Maybe, Evelyn said, not believing it. That afternoon, Sarah Brennan showed up in a wagon loaded with supplies. Heard you had a visitor, she said, climbing down. Thought you might need reinforcements. Boone came out of the barn, rifle in hand. He relaxed when he saw who it was. Who told you? He asked. Everyone. Gideon's been in the saloon every night, drinking and talking. Says he's waiting for someone to come to their senses. Sarah glanced at Evelyn. I'm guessing that someone is you. What's he saying exactly? Evelyn asked. That your father owed money to some very unforgiving people. That you've been running for years. That it's only a matter of time before you do the right thing and turn yourself in. Sarah's mouth tightened. He's making it sound noble, like you're some kind of martyr. I'm not going with him. Good. Because that man is poison. Sarah started unloading the wagon. Flour, dried meat, ammunition. My husband says Gideon's been asking questions about the ranch, how isolated it is, how many people work here, whether Boone keeps money in the house. Planning something, Boone said. Probably. Men like that always are. Sarah handed Evelyn a package wrapped in cloth. That's from Mrs. Patterson. She feels bad about what she said. Won't admit it directly, of course, but the fact that she's sending food says enough. Inside the package was fresh bread, cheese, and a jar of jam. Tell her thank you, Evelyn said. Tell her yourself when this is over. Sarah looked between them. You need help? My husband's got friends. Men who don't take kindly to outsiders threatening locals. I don't want violence, Evelyn said quickly. Might not be up to you. Sarah climbed back onto her wagon. But the offer stands. You need anything. Anything at all. You send word. After she left, Boone carried the supplies inside while Evelyn stood in the yard, looking at the mountains surrounding them. Beautiful and isolated. The perfect place to disappear. The perfect place to be cornered. We should go to town, she said when Boone came back. Talk to the sheriff. Already thought of that. Problem is, what crime has Gideon committed? He made threats, sure, but nothing you can prove. And your father's debt, that's a civil matter. Sheriff won't get involved. So we just wait for him to do something? We prepare. Make sure we're ready when he makes his move. That night, Boone taught Evelyn how to shoot. They set up bottles on the fence behind the barn, far enough from the house that Clara couldn't see. Boone handed Evelyn a pistol, smaller than his rifle but still heavy in her hands. Ever fired a gun before? He asked. No. All right. First rule. Never point it at anything you don't intend to shoot. Second rule. Assume it's always loaded, even when it's not. Third rule. Boone, I'm not going to shoot anyone. Hope you're right. But if it comes down to you or him, I need you to know how. He showed her how to hold it, how to aim, how to breathe. The first shot went wide, the recoil shocking her backwards. The second missed entirely. The third hit the fence post 2 feet from the target. You're pulling right, Boone said, anticipating the kick. Don't think about it. Just squeeze. The fourth shot shattered a bottle. Evelyn stared at the broken glass, feeling something shift inside her. Not pride, exactly. more like grim necessity. Good, Boone said. Again. They practiced until dark, until Evelyn's arms ached and her ears rang despite the cloth Boone had given her to muffle the sound. She wasn't good, but she was better. Good enough to maybe not die immediately if it came to that. Walking back to the house, Boone spoke quietly. I know you don't want to hurt anyone, but if he comes for you, if he comes for Clara, you can't hesitate. You understand? I understand. Do you? Because hesitation gets people killed. Evelyn stopped walking. I said I understand. He studied her face in the fading light. Whatever he saw there seemed to satisfy him because he nodded and kept walking. Inside, Clara was setting the table for dinner. She looked at Evelyn's hands, still trembling slightly from the gun's recoil, but didn't ask questions. They ate in tense silence, all of them listening for hoofbeats that didn't come. The attack, when it finally happened, came from an unexpected direction. It was Sunday, and despite everything, Evelyn insisted they go to town for church. Not because she particularly wanted to pray, but because hiding felt like letting Gideon win. Bad idea, Boone said. Maybe, but I'm tired of being afraid in my own life. So they went. Boone drove, Evelyn sat beside him, Clara wedged between them. The whole way, Boone's hand stayed near his rifle. The church was packed, as always. People turned to stare when they walked in. Evelyn felt the weight of every gaze, heard the whispers that weren't quite quiet enough. They found a pew near the back. Reverend Mills started the service, his voice droning on about sin and redemption. Evelyn barely listened. Halfway through, the church doors opened. Gideon walked in. He didn't sneak or rush, just strolled down the center aisle like he belonged there, smiling at familiar faces, nodding at strangers. He found a seat 3 rows ahead of them and settled in like he planned to stay for the whole sermon. Boone tensed beside her. His hand moved toward his belt, where he'd hidden a pistol under his coat. Don't, Evelyn whispered. Not here. He's playing games. I know. Let him. The service continued. Gideon sat peacefully, occasionally glancing back at Evelyn with that pleasant, terrible smile. When Reverend Mills called for confession, a chance for congregants to speak their sins and seek forgiveness, Gideon stood up. I have something to say, he announced. The church went silent. I know I'm new to Black Hollow, Gideon said, his voice carrying easily through the quiet room. But I believe in honesty, in truth, and I think this community deserves to know who's living among them. Evelyn's stomach dropped. That woman there, Gideon pointed directly at her, Evelyn Calloway, as she calls herself now, she's running from a debt her father incurred before he died, a debt that resulted in her younger sister being sold into servitude. Gasps rippled through the congregation. Now, I don't judge, Gideon continued, his tone sympathetic, concerned. Her father made mistakes. She's suffered for them, but she's been given a chance to make things right, to free her sister from a life of degradation, and instead she's hiding behind a good man and his innocent daughter. That's enough, Boone said, standing. Is it? Because I think these people deserve to know that the woman you've brought into your home, into your daughter's life, is wanted by men who don't forgive and don't forget. Men who will come looking for her eventually. Gideon's smile widened. And when they do, will everyone here be safe? Or will they burn down half the town getting what they want? People were muttering now, looking at Evelyn with a mixture of fear and disgust. You're twisting the truth, Evelyn said, her voice shaking but clear. Am I? Then tell them the truth. Tell them about your father's gambling debts, about the men who took your sister, about why you really came to Black Hollow with nothing but the clothes on your back. Evelyn stood, facing him across the pews. My father did owe money, to criminals who prey on desperate people. My sister was taken when she was 8 years old and forced into labor to pay a debt that wasn't hers. I spent 3 years trying to find her, and when I couldn't, I came here to start over. That's the truth. And now that you know where she is, Gideon asked softly, now that you could free her by simply coming with me, what will you choose? I choose my family. She reached for Clara's hand. This family, the one I have now. Even if it means abandoning your sister to her fate? The question hit like a physical blow. Evelyn felt Clara's hand tighten in hers, felt Boone's presence solid beside her, felt the weight of every eye in the church judging her choice. My sister, she said, voice breaking, would want me to live, to be safe, to have a life. You sure about that? Gideon tilted his head. Because I've spoken to Ruth. Recently, in fact. And she asked about you. Wanted to know if you were still looking for her. I had to tell her no. That you'd given up. That you'd married some rancher and forgotten all about her. Evelyn felt like she'd been gutted. You're lying. Am I? She cried when I told her. Said she understood, but she cried anyway. He paused for effect. She's 17 now. Pretty thing. Won't be pretty much longer, the way she's living. But she wanted me to tell you something if I found you. What? The word came out as a whisper. She said to tell you she forgives you. The church erupted in whispers. Evelyn swayed, Boone's hand on her back the only thing keeping her upright. That's enough, Reverend Mills shouted. This is a house of worship, not a theater for your manipulations. I'm only speaking the truth, Reverend. Gideon's voice stayed calm, reasonable. This woman has brought danger to your community. Her sister is suffering because of her choices. These are facts. Facts wrapped in lies, Boone said. You're not here to help anyone. You're here to collect a debt that should have died with her father. The debt is real. The danger is real. And this town deserves to know what they're protecting. Mrs. Patterson stood up from her pew. Get out. Gideon turned to her, surprised. Ma'am? I said get out. We don't want your kind of truth here. She looked around at the congregation. I've known Evelyn since she arrived. She's worked hard, been a good mother to Clara, and never asked for anything she didn't earn. I don't care what debts her father left behind. That's not her burden to bear. Hear, hear, Sarah Brennan called from the back. Others joined in. Not everyone. Evelyn saw plenty of faces still twisted with suspicion and fear. But enough. Enough to matter. Gideon's pleasant smile finally slipped. You're making a mistake. When those men come looking for her, then we'll deal with them together, Mrs. Patterson said, like a community should. Now get out of our church. For a moment, Evelyn thought Gideon might argue, might push back, but he simply shrugged, smiled again, and walked out the way he'd come in. The doors closed behind him with a soft thud. Reverend Mills cleared his throat. Perhaps we should continue with the service, but nobody was listening anymore. The congregation broke into small groups, arguing and whispering. Some people left immediately. Others came over to offer support. Awkward pats on the shoulder, murmured words of encouragement. Evelyn barely registered any of it. She was still hearing Gideon's words, still seeing Ruth's face as she imagined it now. Older, harder, stripped of the childhood innocence Evelyn remembered. We're leaving, Boone said, guiding her toward the door. Outside, the sun was too bright. The day was too normal. Clara clung to Evelyn's hand, unusually quiet. They made it halfway to the wagon before Gideon appeared from behind the church. 1 week, he said. Boone stepped in front of Evelyn and Clara. We're done talking. 1 week to come up with the money or come with me yourself. After that, my employer sends different men, the kind who don't ask nicely. He looked past Boone to Evelyn. And they don't care about collateral damage. Your husband, his daughter. They'll just be obstacles to remove. You threatening my family? Boone's voice was deadly quiet. I'm stating facts. 1 week. He walked away before Boone could respond, mounting his horse and riding off toward town at that same leisurely pace. Clara was shaking. Evelyn picked her up even though she was too big for it, holding her close while Boone stood rigid with rage. Papa? Clara's voice was small. What's going to happen? Boone looked at them both, his daughter and his wife, the family he'd somehow acquired in the last 6 months, and Evelyn saw something shift in his expression, a decision being made. We're going to fight, he said, and we're going to win. The ride home was silent. Clara fell asleep against Evelyn's shoulder, exhausted from fear. Boone drove with his jaw set, mind clearly working through options and plans. When they reached the ranch, he carried Clara inside and put her to bed. Then he came back to the kitchen where Evelyn was standing by the window, watching the road. I have an idea, he said. I'm listening. It's risky, probably stupid, but it might work. Tell me. He laid out the plan. It was risky, probably stupid, but it was the only chance they had, and Evelyn had stopped running, so she agreed. That night, after Clara was asleep and the house was dark, Evelyn went to her room and pulled out the wedding dress. She unfolded it carefully, running her fingers over the stitching one last time. Then she carried it to the kitchen and fed it into the stove, piece by piece, watching the fabric curl and blacken and turn to ash. It had been a promise to Ruth, a symbol of hope and reunion and all the things she'd lost. But Ruth didn't need symbols, she needed action, and Evelyn was done with promises she couldn't keep. The dress burned bright for a moment, filling the room with light and heat. Then it was gone, nothing left but ashes and smoke. Boone came downstairs and found her staring at the stove. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she said honestly, "but I will be." He put his arm around her shoulders, and they stood there in the dark kitchen, watching the fire die down, preparing for the fight that was coming. Outside, the wind howled through the mountains. Inside, something stronger than fear was taking root. The plan was simple, which meant it would probably go wrong in a dozen different ways. Boone left for town before dawn the next morning, taking the wagon and enough supplies to make it look like a normal trip. Evelyn watched him go from the porch, Clara pressed against her side, both of them trying not to look as terrified as they felt. "He'll be back," Evelyn said, more to herself than Clara. "You promise?" "I hope so." Clara looked up at her. "That's not the same thing." "No, it's not." They went inside and tried to go about their day like it was normal. Like Evelyn's hands weren't shaking while she made breakfast. Like Clara wasn't jumping at every sound. Like they both weren't watching the road, waiting. Boone's plan was to go to the bank in Black Hollow and make inquiries about a loan. He'd be loud about it, conspicuous. Make sure Gideon heard he was trying to raise the money. Then he'd go to the saloon and buy a round of drinks, talk about how his wife's troubles were his troubles, how he was a man who paid his debts. All of it designed to draw Gideon in, to make him think he was winning. Meanwhile, Sarah Brennan was supposed to send word to her husband's contacts, men who'd worked cattle drives and mining camps, who knew how to handle trouble. They'd be waiting at the ranch by nightfall, hidden in the barn in the woods, ready for whatever came next. It was a trap. A risky, probably stupid trap. But it was all they had. The morning dragged. Evelyn tried to keep busy, weeding the garden, mending clothes, teaching Clara her letters. But her mind kept drifting to Ruth, to what Gideon had said about her crying, about forgiving Evelyn for giving up. Had he been telling the truth? Or was it just another manipulation, designed to twist the knife deeper? "You're thinking about your sister," Clara said. Evelyn looked down. They were sitting at the kitchen table, Clara's primer open between them, but neither of them was really reading. "How do you know?" "You get a look like you're somewhere else." Clara traced a letter with her finger. "Do you think she really forgives you?" "I don't know." "Do you forgive yourself?" The question was so direct, so cutting, that Evelyn didn't have an answer ready. "No," she said finally. "I don't think I do." "Why not?" "Because I stopped looking for her. Because I chose safety over her. Because I'm sitting here in a home I don't deserve while she's—" Evelyn's voice broke. "While she's somewhere terrible." Clara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mama used to say that surviving isn't the same as giving up. That sometimes staying alive is the bravest thing you can do." "Your mama was smarter than me." "Maybe. But she's dead and you're not." Clara said it matter-of-factly, without cruelty. "And if you were dead too, nobody would be trying to save Ruth now, right?" Out of the mouths of children. Evelyn pulled Clara close and held her, this girl who'd somehow become hers without either of them planning it. "When did you get so wise?" she asked. "I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention." Despite everything, Evelyn smiled. Around noon, a rider appeared on the road. Evelyn's heart jumped until she recognized the horse, Sarah Brennan's mare. Sarah dismounted quickly, her face flushed from hard riding. "Boone sent word," she said, handing Evelyn a folded note. "Things are moving faster than expected." The note was brief, written in Boone's rough hand. "Gideon took the bait. Bringing him back tonight. Be ready." "How many men did your husband send?" Evelyn asked. 4. They're good men, know how to handle themselves." Sarah glanced around the ranch. "Where do you want them?" Boone said the barn and the tree line, close enough to help, far enough not to be seen. "Smart. Gideon strikes me as the type who'd run if he thought he was outnumbered." Sarah put a hand on Evelyn's arm. "You scared?" "Terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." She squeezed once, then let go. "The men will be here by dark. You just keep that little girl safe, and trust your husband knows what he's doing." After Sarah left, Evelyn spent the afternoon preparing. She loaded the pistol Boone had taught her to shoot and put it in the kitchen drawer. She made sure all the windows were latched. She packed a bag with clothes and food for Clara, just in case they needed to run. Then she sat Clara down and explained what was going to happen. "There might be trouble tonight," she said carefully. "Men coming to the ranch. Your papa and I are going to handle it, but I need you to stay in your room. No matter what you hear, you stay there. Understand?" Clara's eyes were wide. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind we're going to fix, but I need you to promise me you'll stay hidden. What if something happens to you or Papa?" "It won't." "But what if it does?" Evelyn wanted to lie, wanted to promise everything would be fine, but Clara deserved better than pretty lies. "Then you run," Evelyn said. "There's a bag under your bed with food and clothes. You take it and you run to town and you find Mrs. Patterson. She'll take care of you." "I don't want to run. I want to stay with you." "I know, baby. But sometimes being brave means doing what you're told, even when you don't want to." Clara threw her arms around Evelyn's neck, holding tight enough to hurt. "I don't like this plan," she said into Evelyn's shoulder. "Me neither, but it's the plan we've got." They stayed like that until the sun started setting, until the light through the windows turned gold and then gray and then purple. Then Evelyn heard horses. She looked out and saw 4 men riding up the road. They were rough-looking, weathered, the kind of men who'd seen enough violence not to flinch from more. Sarah's husband had chosen well. The leader, a man with a gray beard and a scar across his cheek, dismounted and tipped his hat to Evelyn. "Ma'am, name's John Garrett. Sarah sent us." "Thank you for coming." "Don't thank us yet. We haven't done anything." He looked around the ranch with a professional eye. "Your husband said there'd be at least 2 men coming, maybe more. We'll set up in the barn in the woods. When they arrive, we wait until they make their move. Then we step in. And if they don't make a move, they will. Men like that always do." Garrett and his men disappeared into the shadows as the last light faded from the sky. Evelyn went inside and lit a single lamp in the kitchen, then sent Clara to her room with strict instructions to stay there. Then she sat at the table with the pistol in her lap and waited. Boone arrived an hour after full dark. He came alone, driving the wagon hard, the horses lathered and breathing heavy. He jumped down and came straight to Evelyn. "He's coming, maybe 20 minutes behind me, bringing 3 men with him." "4 total?" "Yeah, more than I expected, but Garrett's men can handle it." "You sure?" "No, but we're committed now." He checked his rifle, his movements quick and practiced. "Where's Clara?" "In her room." "Good. Keep her there." He looked at Evelyn, his face hard in the lamplight. "If this goes bad, if something happens to me, you take Clara and you run. Don't wait. Don't look back. Just go." "Boone, I mean it, Evelyn. Clara's survival comes first. Before mine, before yours, before anything. You understand?" She understood. Understood that he was willing to die for them. Understood that he needed her to promise she'd save their daughter if it came to that. "I understand," she said. He kissed her then, quick and hard, more desperation than romance. When he pulled back, his eyes were fierce. "This ends tonight," he said, "one way or another." Then he went outside to wait. Evelyn sat in the dark kitchen, listening to her own heartbeat, counting the minutes. The pistol was heavy in her hands. She'd never shot anyone before. Didn't know if she could when the time came, but she thought about Clara sleeping upstairs, about Ruth trapped somewhere in Denver, about Boone standing alone on the porch, ready to die protecting them. She could do it. If she had to, she could. The sound of horses came just before midnight. Evelyn moved to the window and watched 4 riders approach the house. Gideon was in front, that same pleasant smile, visible even in the moonlight. Behind him rode 3 men who looked like exactly what they were. Hired muscle, paid to hurt people. Boone stepped off the porch, rifle held across his chest. "That's far enough," he called. Gideon pulled his horse to a stop. "Boone, good to see you again." "Wish I could say the same." "Where's your lovely wife?" "Inside. Where's she staying?" "Shame. I was hoping to talk to her. Explain the situation one more time." Gideon dismounted slowly, hands visible and empty. "Did you raise the money?" "Some of it." "How much is some?" 1,500. It's what the ranch is worth if I mortgage everything. Gideon laughed. 1,500? The debt is 4,000. I'm aware. But it's what I've got. Take it or leave it. That's not how this works, friend. Your wife made this mess. She needs to clean it up. By selling herself to your employer, that's not happening. Then I'm afraid we have a problem. Gideon nodded to his men. They spread out, flanking the house. See, my employer doesn't like being disappointed, and I don't like returning empty-handed. So we're going to make this simple. You hand over the woman, and we ride away peaceful. You refuse, and we take her anyway, along with anything else of value we can carry. Including my daughter? Boone's voice was ice. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. The tension ratcheted up another notch. One of Gideon's men put his hand on his gun. Boone's finger moved closer to his trigger. This was it. The moment where everything either worked or fell apart. Then Garrett stepped out of the barn, rifle aimed at Gideon's back. Wouldn't do that if I were you, he said. Gideon spun, surprise breaking through his pleasant mask for the first time. His men reached for their weapons, but Garrett's other 3 men emerged from the shadows, 1 from behind the wagon, 2 from the tree line. 7 guns now pointed at 4 men. Hell, one of Gideon's men muttered. Gideon recovered quickly, that smile sliding back into place. This is a private matter. Doesn't concern you. These are our neighbors, Garrett said. That makes it our concern. You're making a mistake. Your employer isn't here. We are. And you're outnumbered. So here's what's going to happen. You and your boys are going to mount up and ride out. And you're going to tell whoever sent you that the debt died with Thomas Mercer. His daughter doesn't owe you anything. That's not for you to decide. No, but it's what's happening anyway. Garrett cocked his rifle. Leave, now, while you still can. For a long moment, nobody moved. Evelyn watched from the window, her hand tight on the pistol, ready to step in if things went wrong. Then Gideon's smile turned cruel. You think this is over? He said to Boone. You think 4 farmers with rifles scare my employer? This is just the beginning. We'll be back, with more men, better men. And when we come, we won't ask nicely. Let them come, Boone said. We'll be ready. Gideon looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked past him to the window where Evelyn stood watching. Enjoy your family while you can, he called to her. Won't last long. He mounted his horse and rode away, his men following. They disappeared into the darkness, the sound of hoofbeats fading slowly. Nobody moved for a full minute after they were gone. Then Garrett lowered his rifle. That went better than expected. You think they'll come back? Boone asked. Eventually, but not tonight, and probably not alone. Garrett looked around at his men. You folks might want to think about leaving for a while. Let this settle. No, Evelyn said, stepping out onto the porch. I'm done running. Ma'am, I respect that, but these men, I know what they are. I've been running from them for 3 years. It doesn't work. They always find you. She looked at Boone. We stay. We fight. And if they come back, we make sure they regret it. Garrett studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. All right. Then we'll help you prepare. Reinforce the doors, set up watch points, make this place defensible. Why? Evelyn asked. Why would you help us? Because Sarah asked, and because my wife and I lost a daughter once, to men who thought they could take whatever they wanted. His voice was rough. Nobody should have to go through that alone. The men worked through the night. They reinforced the doors with extra boards, set up firing positions in the barn and behind the corral fence, cached ammunition and water in strategic spots. By dawn, the ranch looked like a fort. Boone came inside as the sun was rising, exhausted and covered in sawdust. It's done, he said. Best we can do anyway. Evelyn was making coffee. She poured him a cup, her hands still shaking slightly from adrenaline. You think it'll be enough? She asked. I think we're about to find out. Clara appeared in the doorway, hair tangled, eyes still heavy with sleep. Is it over? She asked. For now, Boone said. For now isn't the same as forever. No, he agreed, but it's what we've got. Clara climbed into his lap even though she was getting too big for it, and Boone wrapped his arms around her. Evelyn sat across from them, watching this family that had somehow become hers, and felt something fierce and protective rise in her chest. She'd failed Ruth, That guilt would never fully leave. But she wouldn't fail Clara, wouldn't fail Boone, wouldn't fail the life they were trying to build together. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The days that followed were tense. Garrett and his men stayed, taking shifts watching the road. Boone taught Evelyn and Clara both to shoot properly. Clara was too young, probably, but Boone said the frontier didn't care about age when it came to survival. Sarah brought supplies and news from town. Gideon had left Black Hollow, but his threats had spread. Some people thought the Callaways should leave, stop bringing trouble to the community. Others, more than Evelyn expected, offered support. "Town's splitting," Sarah said one afternoon. "Half want you gone, half want to help. It's getting ugly." "I'm sorry," Evelyn said. Evelyn's. "Don't be. Needed to happen anyway. Black Hollow's been too comfortable for too long. Good to remember we're supposed to look out for each other." A week passed, then 2. No sign of Gideon or his men. "Maybe they gave up," Clara said hopefully. Nobody believed that, but they started to relax slightly, started to think they might have won. Then on a Tuesday morning, a stranger rode into town. Not Gideon, someone new, someone worse. Sarah brought the news that afternoon, her face pale. "There's a man asking about you in town," she said. "Says his name is Daniel Crane. Says he works for a Mr. Ashford in Denver." Evelyn's blood went cold. "Ashford? You know him?" "He's the one who took Ruth, the one my father owed money to." Sarah's expression hardened. "This Crane? He's not like Gideon. No charm, no smiles, just cold. He walked into the saloon this morning and asked if anyone knew where the Mercer girl was hiding. When nobody answered, he put $50 on the bar and asked again. Did anyone talk? Not yet, but $50 is a lot of money out here." Sarah gripped Evelyn's hands. "You need to leave, tonight, before he finds this place." "I can't. If I run now, he'll just follow, and next time he might hurt someone to get information." "If you stay, he'll hurt you." "Maybe, but at least it'll be me and not someone else." Boone had been listening from the doorway. Now he stepped forward. "When's he coming?" he asked Sarah. "I don't know, but soon. He's not the patient type." Boone looked at Evelyn. "This is it. The real fight. You sure you want to stay for this?" She thought about running, about taking Clara and disappearing into the mountains, starting over somewhere new. It would be easy, safer. But Ruth was in Denver, still trapped, and running wouldn't free her, wouldn't solve anything. "I'm sure," Evelyn said. Boone nodded like he'd expected that answer. "Then we prepare." Sarah left to gather more help. Garrett's men took up positions. Boone and Evelyn spent the afternoon checking weapons and making plans. Clara sat on the porch, watching the road, looking smaller than usual. Evelyn went out and sat beside her. "You scared?" she asked. "Yeah." "Me too." "But you're staying anyway." "Yeah." Clara leaned against her shoulder. "Mama would have run. She was smart about stuff like this. Always said there was no shame in survival." "Your mama was right. But you're not running." "No." "Why not?" Evelyn thought about how to explain it. How to make a 6-year-old understand that sometimes running away from danger meant running towards something worse. "Because your mama had you to protect," she said finally. "Her job was keeping you safe, and she did it the best way she knew how. But I have you and your papa and a sister somewhere in Denver who's counting on someone to fight for her. And if I run now, I'm letting all of you down." "Even if you die?" "Even then." Clara was quiet for a moment, then she said, "I don't want you to die. I'm going to try very hard not to." "Promise?" Evelyn pulled her close. "I promise I'll fight like hell to stay alive. How's that?" "I guess it's good enough." They sat together as the sun set, watching shadows lengthen across the valley, waiting for whatever came next. Daniel Crane arrived just before midnight. Unlike Gideon, he didn't bother with threats or conversation. He simply rode up to the house with 6 men, hard, silent men who looked like they'd killed before and would again without hesitation. Boone stepped onto the porch. Garrett and his men emerged from their positions, weapons ready. Crane didn't dismount. He sat on his horse, studying the ranch with cold, calculating eyes. "Evelyn Mercer," he said. Not a question, a statement. "I'm here," Evelyn called from the doorway. "You owe Mr. Ashford $4,000. My father owed Mr. Ashford. I owe him nothing. Debts passed to family. You know this. I know your employer is a criminal who preys on desperate people. Crane's expression didn't change. Morality is irrelevant. The debt exists. It will be paid. I don't have $4,000. Then you'll work it off, same as your sister. No. This isn't negotiable, Miss Mercer. It's Mrs. Calloway now, and you're right. It's not negotiable, because I'm not going with you. Crane finally showed some emotion, a slight tightening around his eyes that might have been annoyance. I have 6 men, he said. You have 4, maybe 5 if we count the rancher. This ends one way. Then I guess somebody's going to die tonight, Boone said, raising his rifle. The standoff stretched. Evelyn could see Crane calculating odds, weighing options. His men shifted in their saddles, hands near weapons. Then Clara's voice cut through the tension. Don't hurt my mama! Everyone turned. Clara stood in the doorway, Evelyn's pistol held in both hands, pointed vaguely in Crane's direction. Clara, get inside, Evelyn said sharply. No, he's trying to take you away. I said get inside. But Clara didn't move. She stood there, 7 years old and terrified, holding a gun that was too big for her hands, protecting the only mother she had left. Crane looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked back at Evelyn. Mr. Ashford doesn't make exceptions, he said. But I do. For children. He turned his horse. You have 1 week to come to Denver voluntarily. If you don't, I'll come back. And I won't be so patient next time. If you come back, Boone said, you won't leave alive. Crane smiled, a thin, humorless expression. We'll see. He rode away, his men following in tight formation. As soon as they were out of sight, Evelyn ran to Clara and took the gun from her shaking hands. What were you thinking? She demanded, fear making her voice harsh. You could have been killed. He was going to take you. So you pointed a gun at him? Clara, that was... Evelyn stopped, pulled the girl into her arms. That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen. Clara burst into tears, all the fear she'd been holding back finally breaking free. Evelyn held her while she sobbed, feeling her own tears start to fall. Boone came over and wrapped his arms around both of them. It's not over, he said quietly. I know. 1 week. I know. We need a real plan this time. Evelyn pulled back, wiping her eyes. I have one, but you're not going to like it. She told him. He didn't like it. But after an hour of arguing, he finally agreed there was no other way. They had 1 week to save Ruth and end this. 1 week to either win or lose everything. The plan was simple in the way most desperate plans are. 1 wrong move and everyone died. Evelyn would go to Denver, alone. She'd walk right into Ashford's establishment, offer herself in exchange for Ruth, and then Boone and Garrett's men would storm the place and get them both out. It's suicide, Boone said for the 10th time. It's the only way to find Ruth, Evelyn said for the 10th time back. They were in the barn, speaking low so Clara wouldn't hear. Sarah stood watch by the door while Garrett and his men loaded weapons and prepared horses. We don't even know if your sister's actually there, Boone argued. Crane could have been lying. Gideon could have been lying. This whole thing could be a trap. Of course it's a trap, but Ruth is the bait, and I'm done leaving her there. Then we all go, storm the place together. And they'll see us coming from a mile away. They'll move Ruth, or worse. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Boone slammed his fist against a support beam, making the whole structure shake. I hate this. I know. If something goes wrong, then you get Clara out of here. You take her somewhere safe, and you raise her, and you tell her I tried. That's not good enough. It's going to have to be. Sarah cleared her throat from the doorway. We don't have much time. If you're doing this, it needs to be tonight. Crane's expecting you to wait until the deadline, which means tonight's our only chance at surprise. Evelyn looked at Boone. His face was hard, jaw clenched, but she saw the fear underneath, the same fear she felt. Trust me, she said quietly. 1 more time, just trust me. He pulled her close, crushing her against his chest like he could keep her safe through will alone. You come back, he said into her hair. You hear me? You come back. I'll try. Not good enough. Promise me. Evelyn pulled back enough to look at him. I promise I'll fight like hell to come back to you and Clara. That's the best I can do. He kissed her then, hard and desperate, like it might be the last time. When he finally let go, his eyes were wet. "I love you," he said, "in case I haven't said it before, in case I don't get another chance. I love you." It was the first time he'd said it, the first time either of them had. "I love you too," Evelyn whispered. "Both of you. That's why I have to do this." She left before he could argue more, left before her courage failed, left before she could think too hard about all the ways this could go wrong. Clara was waiting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, eyes red from crying. "You're really going," she said. "I have to. What if you don't come back? Your papa will take care of you." "That's not what I asked." Evelyn knelt down so they were eye level. "Then you remember that I loved you, that being your mother, even for just a little while, was the best thing that ever happened to me." Clara threw her arms around Evelyn's neck. "Don't die. Please don't die." "I'm going to try my hardest not to." That's what Mama said, right before she did. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Evelyn held Clara tighter, breathing in the smell of her hair, sunshine and wood smoke and childhood. "I'm not your first mother," Evelyn said, "but if I get to come back, I want to be your only mother from here on out. Deal?" Clara nodded against her shoulder. "Deal." They held each other until Sarah called that the horses were ready. Then Evelyn forced herself to let go, to stand up, to walk away from the only real home she'd had in 3 years. She didn't look back. Couldn't. If she saw Clara's face one more time, she'd lose her nerve entirely. The ride to Denver took 2 days. Evelyn went with Sarah, while Boone and Garrett's men followed at a distance, staying out of sight. The plan was for Evelyn to arrive alone, make contact with Crane, and get inside Ashford's establishment. Once she confirmed Ruth was there, she'd signal from a window, a candle in a specific spot, and the men would come in. Simple, straightforward, completely insane. They reached Denver just after dark on the second day. The city was bigger than Evelyn remembered, sprawling and loud, with electric lights just starting to appear on the main streets. Sarah found them a cheap boarding house on the edge of town, and they sat in a cramped room planning the next steps. "Ashford's place is downtown," Sarah said. She'd done her research, asked around, gathered information. "It's listed as a boarding house, but everyone knows what it really is. Girls go in, don't come out unless their debt's paid or they're too used up to be worth keeping." Evelyn felt sick. "How do I get in?" "Walk up to the front door. Tell whoever answers you're there to see Crane. He'll be expecting you." "And then you find Ruth, you signal, and you trust that your husband gets there in time." Evelyn looked out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Ruth was waiting. Had been waiting for 3 years, wondering if anyone was coming, wondering if anyone cared. "I should go tonight," Evelyn said. "You should rest. Get your head straight. If I wait, I'll lose my nerve." Sarah studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but I'm coming with you. To the street, at least. You're not walking into that place without backup nearby." They left the boarding house an hour later. The streets were busy despite the late hour, men stumbling between saloons, women in bright dresses calling from doorways, the sounds of piano music and laughter spilling from open windows. Ashford's establishment was on a quieter street, set back from the main road. It was a 3-story building with dark windows and a heavy door. A sign out front read Ashford House, rooms available. Nothing to indicate what really happened inside. Sarah stopped at the corner. "That's it." Evelyn stared at the building. Behind one of those dark windows, Ruth might be sleeping, or crying, or so broken she didn't remember what hope felt like. "You don't have to do this," Sarah said. "We could find another way." "There is no other way." Evelyn squeezed Sarah's hand once. "Thank you. For everything. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you're both home safe." Evelyn walked to the front door and knocked. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might crack a rib. The door opened. A man stood there, not Crane, someone else, big and scarred and utterly disinterested. "We're full," he said. "I'm here to see Daniel Crane." The man's expression changed slightly. "You the Mercer girl?" "Yes." He stepped aside. "He's been expecting you." The inside of Ashford's establishment was nicer than Evelyn expected. Carpeted hallways, wallpaper, gaslights casting warm, deceptive light. It looked almost respectable. Almost. The man led her to a parlor on the first floor. Crane sat in a leather chair, reading a newspaper like this was a social call. "Mrs. Calloway," he said, not looking up. "You're early." "I'm here. That's what matters." "Indeed." He folded the paper and finally looked at her. "Where's your husband?" "Back at the ranch. He wanted to come, but I told him this was my debt to settle." Crane studied her, looking for the lie. Evelyn kept her face neutral, her hands steady. "Smart woman," he said finally. "Most would have brought an army. Most don't have a sister trapped here for 3 years." "Ah, yes. Ruth." He smiled that thin, humorless smile. "She'll be glad to see you. Asked about you often in the beginning. Stopped asking about a year ago." The words were designed to hurt. They succeeded. "I want to see her," Evelyn said. "Of course, but first we discuss terms. You work off your father's debt, $4,000. Standard rate is $50 a month after room and board. That's roughly 7 years of work." 7 years, give or take, assuming you stay healthy and cooperative. Most don't. "And Ruth goes free?" "Once you sign the contract, yes, she'll be released immediately." It was too easy, too clean. Evelyn knew there had to be a catch. "Show me the contract," she said. Crane pulled a document from his jacket and handed it over. Evelyn read it carefully, looking for the trap. The language was dense, full of legal terms she barely understood, but the core was simple enough. She agreed to work for Ashford until the debt was paid, and Ruth would be released upon signing. "I want to see her first," Evelyn said, "before I sign anything." "That's not how this works." "Then I don't sign." They stared at each other. Evelyn forced herself not to blink, not to back down. Finally, Crane stood. "Fine, but you try anything, and the deal's off. Understood?" "Understood." He led her upstairs. The second floor was different from the first, darker, shabbier, with doors lining a narrow hallway. Behind some of them, Evelyn heard voices. Crying. The sound made her skin crawl. Crane stopped at a door near the end of the hall and knocked once. "Ruth, you have a visitor." The door opened slowly. A girl stood there, thin and pale, with blonde hair pulled back and eyes that looked decades older than they should. It took Evelyn a moment to recognize her own sister. "Ruth?" The girl stared at her, then her eyes widened. "Evelyn?" They crashed together in the doorway, Ruth sobbing, Evelyn holding her so tight she probably couldn't breathe. She was real, alive. "Here." "I'm sorry," Evelyn whispered. "I'm so sorry I stopped looking. I'm so sorry." "You came," Ruth said, pulling back to look at her. "You actually came." "Of course I came." I thought you forgot about me." "Never. Not once. Not ever." Crane cleared his throat. "Touching reunion, but we have business to complete." Evelyn wiped her eyes, trying to think. She needed to signal Boone, but Crane was watching too closely. She needed more time. "Can I have a moment alone with my sister?" she asked. "No. 5 minutes. That's all. Then I'll sign whatever you want." Crane considered it. 5 minutes. I'll be right outside." He stepped into the hallway and closed the door. Evelyn immediately went to the window and looked out. She could see the street below, the corner where Sarah was supposed to be waiting. She pulled a candle from her pocket, the signal, and set it on the windowsill. "What are you doing?" Ruth asked. "Getting us out of here." "Evelyn, you can't. If you don't sign that contract, Crane will. I'm not signing anything, and neither are you." Evelyn turned back to her sister. "My husband is outside with armed men. When they see the signal, they're coming in." Ruth's face went pale. "You brought them here? Do you have any idea what Ashford will do when he finds out? He'll kill everyone. He has connections, police, judges. You can't fight him." "Watch me. This is insane. You should have just stayed away. I was surviving. I would have—" "No." Evelyn grabbed Ruth's shoulders. "You weren't surviving. You were dying slowly, and I wasn't going to let that happen anymore." Ruth stared at her, and for the first time, something other than defeat showed in her eyes. Something that might have been hope. "What do we do?" she whispered. "We wait for help. And when it comes, we run like hell." Outside in the hallway, Crane was talking to someone. The voices were low, urgent. Then footsteps coming closer. The door burst open. Crane stood there with 3 men, all armed. "I knew you were lying," he said. "Your friends made a lot of noise getting into position. Evelyn's stomach dropped. The plan had failed before it even started. "Ruth, get behind me," she said. "There's nowhere to go," Crane said. "The building's surrounded. My men are dealing with your husband and his friends as we speak." "It's over." Then gunfire erupted from downstairs. Shouts, the crash of breaking furniture. Crane's expression flickered with uncertainty for the first time. "Stay here," he told his men. "Don't let them leave." He disappeared down the hallway. The three men moved into the room, blocking the door. Evelyn looked around desperately. The window was too high to jump from. The door was blocked. They were trapped. Then Ruth picked up a heavy candlestick from the dresser and smashed it into the nearest man's head. He went down hard. The other two lunged for her, but Evelyn grabbed a chair and swung it at them. The wood splintered across one man's shoulder, sending him stumbling back. Ruth kicked the third man in the knee, and he dropped with a scream. "Run!" Evelyn shouted. They burst into the hallway and ran toward the stairs. Behind them, the men were getting up, yelling for help. Ahead, the sounds of fighting grew louder. They reached the first floor just as Boone came through the front door, rifle in hand, Garrett right behind him. Bodies lay on the floor. Ashford's men, unconscious or worse. Boone saw Evelyn, and his face transformed with relief. "Go!" he shouted. "Out the back!" But before they could move, Crane appeared at the top of the stairs with a pistol. He fired once, the shot deafening in the enclosed space. Garrett went down, blood blooming across his shirt. Boone returned fire, driving Crane back behind the banister. More of Ashford's men were coming from the back of the building. They were outnumbered and running out of time. "The window!" Sarah's voice came from outside. She'd smashed the parlor window and was reaching through. "Come on!" Evelyn shoved Ruth toward the window. Sarah grabbed her and pulled her through. Evelyn started to follow, but Crane fired again. The bullet hit the wall inches from her head. Boone grabbed her and physically threw her toward the window. She crashed through, landing hard on the street, glass cutting her hands and arms. "Boone, she good, sir," she screamed. He was still inside, firing at Crane, covering their escape. Garrett's other men were pulling back, dragging their wounded friend between them. Then Boone jumped through the window, rolling as he landed. Bullets followed him, shattering what was left of the glass. "Run!" he yelled. They ran. All of them, through dark streets and alleyways, the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. Sarah led the way, knowing the city better than any of them. They ran until Evelyn's lungs burned, until Ruth stumbled and had to be carried, until the sounds of chasing footsteps finally faded. They ended up in the livery stable where they'd left the horses. Sarah barred the door while Boone checked everyone for injuries. Garrett was in bad shape, bleeding heavily. One of his men was working on him, but it didn't look good. "We need to leave the city," Boone said. "Now, before Ashford's men regroup." "Garrett can't ride like this," one of his men protested. "Then we get a wagon, but we don't stay here." They stole a wagon from behind the stable. No time to ask permission or pay. Loaded Garrett into the back with Ruth and Evelyn. Sarah drove while Boone and the other men rode alongside, watching for pursuit. They pushed hard through the night, not stopping until they were 10 miles outside Denver. Dawn was breaking by then, painting the mountains pink and gold. Garrett died just after sunrise. They buried him beside the road, marking the grave with stones. His men stood silent, hats in hands, while Sarah said a few words about courage and sacrifice. Evelyn held Ruth close, both of them crying for a man who'd died helping them. Boone stood apart, staring back toward Denver with hard eyes. "He'll send more men," he said when they were riding again. "Ashford won't let this go." "I know," Evelyn said. "We can't go back to the ranch. Not right away. Too obvious." "Where then?" Boone thought for a moment. "I know a place. Old mining camp in the mountains. Abandoned, but defensible. We can wait there, see if he comes after us." So they went deeper into the wilderness, following trails that barely existed, climbing higher into the mountains. The mining camp turned out to be a collection of half-collapsed buildings and rusted equipment, but the main cabin was still solid. They fortified it as best they could and settled in to wait. Days passed. No one came. Ruth slowly started to come back to herself. The haunted look in her eyes faded slightly. She ate more, talked more, started to remember what it felt like to be safe. One evening, she and Evelyn sat outside the cabin watching the sunset. "I gave up on you," Ruth said quietly. After the first year, I decided you weren't coming and I needed to accept it. I don't blame you. I blamed you, though, for a long time. Hated you for leaving me there. The words hurt, but Evelyn had expected them. You had every right to. But you came anyway. Even after all that time, even knowing I probably hated you. Ruth looked at her sister. Why? Because you're my sister. Because I loved you. Because giving up on you felt like dying. Evelyn paused. And because I found something worth fighting for. A family. A home. And I realized I couldn't have any of it while you were still trapped. Ruth leaned against her shoulder. Tell me about them. Your husband and his daughter. So Evelyn did. She told Ruth about Clara's wild spirit and Boone's quiet strength, about the ranch and the garden, and the way they'd become a family without any of them planning it, about learning to belong somewhere after years of running. You love them, Ruth said, more than I thought possible. Then we need to make sure Ashford doesn't take that away from you. We? Ruth smiled, a real smile, the first Evelyn had seen since finding her. You fought for me? Now I fight for you. That's how family works, right? 3 weeks after Denver, a rider appeared on the trail below the mining camp. Boone had men watching the approaches, and they brought word immediately. One man, they reported, riding slow. Doesn't look like trouble. Boone went down to meet him anyway, rifle ready. Evelyn and Ruth watched from the cabin. The rider turned out to be a lawyer from Denver. He carried a document case and a white flag tied to his saddle. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Ashford, he announced. Wrong place for that, Boone said. Please, I'm only delivering a message. The lawyer held out an envelope. Mr. Ashford wishes to settle this matter legally rather than through further violence. Boone took the envelope but didn't open it. What's he offering? A signed release for Ruth Mercer and Evelyn Calloway, absolving them of all debts related to Thomas Mercer. In exchange, Mrs. Calloway signs an affidavit stating she was never held against her will and that Mr. Ashford's establishment operates within the law. That's it? He just lets them go? The loss of his building and 3 men was expensive. Another assault on your position would be equally costly. Mr. Ashford is a businessman. He knows when to cut his losses. It sounded too good to be true. Probably was. We'll consider it, Boone said. You have 3 days. After that, the offer expires, and Mr. Ashford pursues other remedies. The lawyer tipped his hat. Good day. He rode away, leaving Boone standing in the trail holding an envelope that might contain freedom or another trap. They discussed it for hours. Sarah argued they should take the deal. It was the best they'd get. Garrett's men said they should run, keep moving, never trust Ashford. Ruth said it was Evelyn's choice. Boone said he'd support whatever Evelyn decided. She read the document a dozen times, looking for the lie. The language was clear enough. Complete release of all debts, no further claims, signed and witnessed by a judge. If it's real, she said, we could go home. Really go home. No more running. If it's real, Boone agreed, but if it's a trap, then we're not any worse off than we are now. She signed it. 3 days later, the lawyer returned, verified the signature, and handed over Ashford's signed copy. Just like that, it was done. They didn't believe it at first. Kept waiting for men with guns to appear. Kept watching the trails. But weeks passed and no one came. Finally, cautiously, they went home. The ranch was still standing. The garden had gone wild, but the house was intact. Clara came running from Sarah's place where she'd been staying, launching herself at Evelyn with enough force to knock them both down. You came back, Clara sobbed. You promised and you came back. Told you I'd try my hardest, Evelyn said, holding her tight. Boone joined them, wrapping his arms around all 3 of them, his wife, his daughter, and the sister they'd fought so hard to save. That night, after Clara finally fell asleep between exhaustion and relief, Boone and Evelyn stood on the porch looking at the mountains. It's really over, Evelyn said. Seems like. I keep waiting for something else to go wrong. Yeah, me too. He pulled her close. But maybe we get to just live now, work the ranch, raise Clara. Be boring. I'd like boring. Good, because I'm planning on 40 years of extremely boring with you. Evelyn laughed. Actually, laughed. It felt strange after so much fear and fighting. Ruth emerged from the house, wrapped in a blanket. She looked small and uncertain in the moonlight. Can't sleep? Evelyn asked. Not used to quiet yet. Keep waiting for someone to tell me what to do. You're free now. You get to decide. Ruth looked out at the dark valley. I don't know how to do that anymore. You'll learn, Boone said. We'll help. Why? You don't know me. I'm not your family. You're Evelyn's sister. That makes you ours. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve this. Any of this. Evelyn took her hand. Neither did I. But we got it anyway. That's how grace works sometimes. They stood together on the porch. Three people who'd survived things they shouldn't have, who'd found each other against all odds, who were choosing to build something new from the wreckage of their pasts. The months that followed were hard in different ways. Ruth had nightmares that woke the whole house. Clara struggled with jealousy, suddenly having to share Evelyn's attention. The ranch work was relentless, and money was tight, but they learned to navigate it together. Ruth started helping with the garden, discovering she had a gift for growing things. She and Clara formed an uneasy alliance that slowly turned into genuine friendship. She even started smiling sometimes, though it took months before it looked natural. Winter came early again that year. The first snow fell in October, covering everything in white silence. But this time the house was full, 6 people now instead of 3, crowded and loud and chaotic. One evening, after dinner, Clara asked Ruth to tell her a story. I don't know any good ones, Ruth said. Sure you do. Tell me about when you and Evelyn were kids. So Ruth did. She told stories about their mother and father before everything went wrong, about summers by a creek that probably didn't exist anymore, about the promise she and Evelyn had made beneath the mountains. Did you keep it? Clara asked. The promise? Ruth looked at Evelyn across the table. Yeah, we did. Just took a lot longer than we expected. That night, Boone found Evelyn in their room, going through the trunk where she used to keep the wedding dress. Looking for something? He asked. Just checking it's really gone. The dress. The past. All of it. It's gone. I know, but sometimes I need to make sure. He sat beside her on the bed. You still think about Ruth, about those 3 years she was gone. Every day, probably will for the rest of my life. You know it wasn't your fault, right? What happened to her? My head knows that. My heart's still working on believing it. Boone took her hand. You saved her. In the end. That's what matters. I almost didn't. Almost let her stay there because I was too scared to fight. But you did fight. And you won. And now she's downstairs teaching Clara how to braid hair. He smiled. That's the story that counts. Not the one where you failed. The one where you didn't give up. Evelyn leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. I thought I came here to hide, to disappear. And I found out you can't really disappear. You can only choose what you're running toward instead of what you're running from. That's pretty wise. Clara said it first, or something like it. She's a smart kid. She's your kid. Ours, he corrected. All of ours now. On Christmas morning, Clara woke everyone before dawn, dragging them to the parlor where she'd set up gifts she'd made herself, carved wooden animals for everyone, painted with colors she'd mixed from crushed berries and clay. They're terrible, she announced proudly, but I made them. They were terrible, lopsided and roughly painted, but everyone pretended they were masterpieces, setting them on shelves and tables like treasures. Ruth gave Evelyn a book she'd borrowed from Sarah and carefully copied by hand, recipes and household tips, written in Ruth's careful script. So you stopped burning everything, she said. Evelyn hugged her, crying for the 100th time that week, happy tears this time. Boone's gift to Evelyn was simple, a deed to the ranch with both their names on it. It's ours now, he said. Official, not just a marriage of convenience anymore. Was it ever? No. But now it's on paper. Later that afternoon, after the gifts and the meal and the chaos had settled, Evelyn found herself back on the porch, looking at the mountains. The same view she'd seen the first time she arrived, terrified and desperate, and convinced nothing good waited for her. She'd been wrong about that. Clara joined her, leaning against the railing. You thinking about the old dress again? How'd you know? You get a look, like you're somewhere else. I was just thinking about promises. The ones we keep and the ones we break. You kept yours. You said you'd come back and you did. I said I'd try. That's different from promising. Not really. Clara looked up at her. Trying is the same as promising when you actually do it. Maybe that was the truth of it. Maybe promises weren't about guarantees or certainty. Maybe they were just about showing up and trying, even when everything was falling apart. The dress had been a promise made by a different Evelyn, younger, more naive, convinced she could control the future through sheer will. But life didn't work that way. You couldn't promise the future. You could only promise the effort, and she'd done that. Had kept trying, kept fighting, kept showing up until she'd made something real out of the wreckage. Spring came slowly that year, reluctant and cold. But when it finally arrived, the garden exploded with life. Everything they'd planted, the potatoes and carrots and beans, came up strong and healthy. Ruth added flowers along the fence, bright splashes of color against the mountain backdrop. Clara appointed herself head of garden security, chasing off rabbits and crows with more enthusiasm than effectiveness. On a warm afternoon in May, Sarah rode up with news from town. Heard something you should know, she said. Ashford's establishment in Denver burned down last month. Total loss. He's facing charges for debt bondage and running an illegal operation. Evelyn felt something loosen in her chest. Is he in jail? Awaiting trial. But with the evidence they found and the girls willing to testify, he's not getting out. Sarah smiled. Thought you'd want to know it's really over. After Sarah left, Evelyn told Ruth the news. Her sister cried, deep, heaving sobs that seemed to come from somewhere ancient and wounded. It's over, she kept saying. It's really over. And it was. Not perfectly, not without scars, but over nonetheless. That summer, Boone proposed they have a real wedding, not the humiliating spectacle in Black Hollow, but something small and meaningful. We're already married, Evelyn pointed out. Legally, sure, but I want to marry you again, the right way, with people who actually care. So they did. Sarah officiated in the garden Ruth had planted, with Clara and Ruth standing witness. There were maybe 10 people there, friends from town who'd helped them, Garrett's men who'd survived, a few neighbors who'd proven their loyalty. Evelyn wore a simple dress Ruth had sewn, cream-colored with wildflowers embroidered on the hem. Nothing like the old wedding dress. Nothing borrowed or burdened with the past, just something new. When Boone said his vows, roughly written, imperfectly delivered, his voice cracked with emotion. I married you the first time because I needed help, he said. I'm marrying you now because I can't imagine life without you. You make me better. You make Clara better. You make this place feel like home. Evelyn's turn. She'd written and rewritten her vows a dozen times, trying to capture everything she felt. I came here broken and desperate and convinced I didn't deserve happiness, she said. You proved me wrong. You and Clara gave me a family when I thought I'd lost the only one I'd ever have. You taught me that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, about choosing each other, about building something together even when the world's falling apart. They exchanged simple gold bands. Nothing fancy, but real and solid and permanent. Clara shouted, "You can kiss now!" before anyone officially said so, making everyone laugh. When Boone kissed her, it was soft and sure and full of promise. Not the desperate kiss of a man afraid of losing her, but the steady kiss of a man planning to keep her forever. The party afterward was loud and chaotic, with Clara running wild and Ruth actually laughing, really laughing, at something one of Garrett's men said. As the sun set, painting the mountains gold and purple, Evelyn stood with Boone's arm around her waist, and Clara pressed against her side, watching Ruth dance badly to music from Sarah's husband's fiddle. "This is enough," she said quietly. "What is?" Boone asked. "This. All of it. I spent so many years thinking I needed to earn happiness, that I had to make up for losing Ruth before I deserved anything good." She looked up at him. "But I was wrong. We don't earn love. We don't deserve family. We just get lucky sometimes, and we choose to hold on to it." "You think we got lucky?" "I think we fought for each other when it would have been easier to quit, and that's better than luck. That's choice." Clara tugged on Evelyn's dress. "Can I have another piece of cake? You've had 3 already." "So that's a no?" "That's a maybe ask your father." "Papa, can I—" "One more," Boone said. "But that's it." Clara ran off, and Evelyn rested her head against Boone's shoulder, watching the celebration continue around them. This was what grace looked like, she thought. Not perfect, not earned, just given freely to people who'd been broken and desperate and convinced they'd lost everything. It looked like a garden growing wild in the mountains, like a sister learning to smile again, like a child who'd claimed Evelyn as her mother before Evelyn even knew she was allowed to want that. It looked like a man who'd married her out of necessity and chosen to love her out of something deeper. It looked like home. Not the home she'd lost, not the home she'd imagined, but the one she'd built with her own scarred hands and stubborn heart. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.